Hello students, I am Nikhil and welcome to Smart Solutions. So we have started with 10th standard history chapter number 1. So we'll today this will be the second lecture of the series. So today we will start with the French Revolution and the idea of nation. Okay. The first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. So, in Standard 9, we had seen some events that took place in the France. So, basically, the French Revolution it started in and around 1789. So, France, as you would remember, was a full-fledged terrestrial state in 1789 under the rule of an absolute monarchy. So, if you recall, there was an absolute monarchy in the France. Louis 14th or 16th was the king who was ruling this area or the province. The political and constitutional charges that came into the wake of French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to the body of French citizens. So, what happened during this century, that is the late or the early 18th century, you can say, the revolution outbroke into the France. The French people rose against the existing monarchy. They abolished the monarchy. The king was assassinated, and thus the the political power was changed from monarchy to the uh, government that they formed, that was basically a Jacobean government. So in this way, the French people were able to uh, absolutely bring down the monarchy in France. The revolution proclaimed that it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny. So with this, all the powers of the monarch, the king, was taken away, and an assembly was formed, which would further now form a government into the France, and they would be ruling the France in general. So basically the idea behind this assembly or the form of government was a democratic, you can say, or republic form, in which the representatives from the society were elected by the people, and they themselves took decisions for the welfare of the people. From the very beginning, the French revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that could create a sense of collective identity among the French people. So, when the French people were in the revolutionary phase, so various measures and practices were taken so that all the peoples would share a common idea. That is the idea of la patrie, the fatherland, and li citizen, the citizen, the idea of fatherland and the citizen, which emphasized a notion of united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. So this was the basic idea that was prevailing during the revolutionary period in France. A French flag, the tricolor, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. So they also designed a new flag with three colors, that is tricolor flag, as against the existing flag which indicated royal standards. The State General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed the National Assembly. So State General was elected by the elections from the people, and the citizen and the General Assembly was renamed as National Assembly. So newer hymns were composed, newer songs were composed, new verses were composed, oaths taken, people took oaths, and martyrs commemorated, and in the name of nation. So what was done, that those who has sacrificed their lives, they were remembered, and some celebration or some days were celebrated in the memory of these great people. A centralized administrative system was put into the place, and it formulated uniform laws for all citizens within its territory. So unlike the monarchy where the power were uh, in the hands of some countable people, here a centralized administrative system was formed. There were some rules formulated within the territory, and various laws were created which were binding upon all the citizens that lived in that particular territory. So internal custom duties and dues were abolished. So whatever internal customs or taxes people had to pay during the monarchy rule, everything was abolished, and a uniform system of wages and measures was adopted. So this was a great reform. Like they adopted certain weights and measures system. So because of this, what has happened that initially when the France was divided into different kingdoms where different monarchs used to rule, the measurement and weightage of different commodities was done as per the provincial standards. So say for example, if there were five kingdoms, then each of the kingdom had its own method of measuring and weighing the customs, and also they had their different currencies. So because of this, the trade between the nations or the trade between the you can say kingdoms was very difficult. Say for example, if a tradesman has to uh, sell his commodity from a distance place, then he used to had to pass, say for example, three or four kingdoms on his way to the market. So in each kingdom he has to pay some taxes. So because of a common nation now formed after the reform, all these taxations or weighing measures, they were abolished and a new system was adopted. So because of this, there was reduction in the taxes and also reduction in various other administrative requirements. So regional dialects were encouraged, and French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of the nation. So with this again, since French was the language that was commonly used or commonly used for communication in the society, so it became their national language. But along with French, different regions in the France itself, they had different languages existing altogether. When the news No, the revolutionaries further declared that it was the mission and the destiny of the French nation to liberate the people of Europe from the despotism. In other words, to help other people of Europe to become free. So as we see that France or French has already undergone a revolution and they have abolished monarchy, they have established their own government, the government of the people, where people were now enjoying liberty. So these French people, they also saw a dream of the Europe, that someday Europe will also go undergo a renaissance, a revolution, and French people would be helping these European people to get their freedom, to get them liberty. And further they also thought that someday Europe will also be transformed like France into a single nation. So when the news of events in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and other members of educated middle classes began setting up Jacobean clubs. So when these thoughts of liberty, nationalism, they spread into the European cities, the people or students, those who were educated, they also started thinking about this thought, and now they started forming Jacobean clubs. So if you see and go back to the French Revolution, the same thing had happened. People in France had also started forming some clubs among themselves in which they shared the thought of freedom, liberty, and independence. So now the same thing was also taking place in Europe. Their activities and campaign prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland. So these Jacobean clubs, they become active in Europe. So because of their activities and various campaigns at different regions, they made a path for French armies to enter their territory. So the French armies now moved into the Europe, into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy in 1970s. So with the outbreak of the revolutionary wars, the French army began to carry the idea of nationalism and abroad. So as and when now, because of the help of the Jacobean clubs, when the French army began penetrating into the Europe, they also started fighting with the local kingdoms, and defeating them, they acquired various land in the Europe. But since the European has had brought with them the idea of liberty, uh, European people were basically happy at initial days because of the idea of liberty. Within the wide swath of territory that came under his control, Napoleon set up about introducing many of the reforms that he had already introduced in France. So, with these new conquering territories, Napoleon set up different reforms into the Europe as well that he initially started in France. through a return to monarchy, Napoleon had no doubt destroyed democracy in France, but in the administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. But what has happened in France also, when Napoleon came into power, he completely uh, removed the government, the Jacobean government, you can say, which was formed in France, the republic or the democratic government, and he again started with monarchy. So he was basically the ruler, but unlike other rulers, he had created some good system, good administration, good transportation facilities. He had given some liberty to the people. So we can say that in comparison with the previously existing kingdoms, Napoleon was a bit good person. So, through a return to monarchy, Napoleon had no doubt destroyed democracy in France, but in administrative field, he had incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make whole system more rational and efficient. The civic code was set up by Napoleon in 1804, and these were known as Napoleonic Code. So, what these codes basically did, they removed the belief that anyone who is by birth, no one will have a higher position or a lower position by birth, all should be equal. He also established equality before the law, that is, before the law, no person is higher and no person is lower, all are of equal status, irrespective of their status in the society, irrespective of the wealth they have, and secured the right to property. So he also gave citizens the right to property, that is, every citizen can collect wealth whatever they wished. So this code was exported to the regions under French control. So the same thing, like same rules were implemented in the European countries also. So this code was exported to the regions under French control. In the Dutch Republic, in Switzerland, in Italy and Germany, Napoleon simplified administrative divisions. So as and when Napoleon conquered different regions, so he basically changed the administrative system over there. He made administrative system much easier for the people. He abolished the feudal system which was existing there, and freed peasant from serfdom and monitorial dues. So what was happening in Europe? See, there was some kingdoms. So there used to be king. Some king has his he had his assembly where there were different ministers. So all these ministers, they were given different tasks. All these ministers also were given the responsibility to collect taxes from different regions. So each region had an responsible person to collect taxes. So this responsible person, what he used to do is he used to give farm, the ownership of the farm, to small farmers on the basis of rent, you can say. So these people used to collect rent from the farmers, because the farmer used to carry out their agricultural activities on this land, and this rent that they got from these farmers, they used to pass this few percentage to the king, and rest was kept with them. So in this way uh, they used to collect lot of taxes from the farmer. Yeah. So when Napoleon came into power, he saw that this is the system which is prevailing in Europe. So he abolished this system. He tried to completely remove this system. He also tried to freed the people, those who are working at these ministerial or some landlord's house, within a very small salaries, you can say, or very um bad situations. So this was the major reform for the life of peasants in Europe. So in the town too, guild restrictions were removed, transportation and communication systems were improved. Napoleon also improved the transportation and communication system. Peasant artisans, workers, and new businessmen enjoyed a new founded freedom. So all the people who belong to the common class, they all enjoyed this freedom. Businessmen and small scale producers of goods in particular began to realize that uniform laws, standardized weight and measures, and a common national currencies would facilitate the movement and exchange of goods and capital from one region to another region. The most benefited class was the business class, because of an even standard weights and measures and common currency, a lot of hectic was reduced, and it was easier for them now to trade in the different regions with less administrative requirements or less admin works. But what has happened, however, in the areas conquered, the reaction of the local people into French rule were mixed. But as the time passed, people had mixed reactions. Some thought that this government or the Napoleon rule was good, but some thought that the Napoleon rule was not as good. Right. So initially, in many places such as Holland and Switzerland, as well as in certain cities like Brussels, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw, the French armies were welcome as harbingers of liberty. So in these cities, initially, the French army was welcome as it indicated the future liberty that they are going to bring with them. But the initial enthusiasm soon turned to hostility, but the enthusiasm that people had that soon turned to hostility because it became clear that new administrative arrangements did not go hand in hand with political freedom, because they now came to know that all the administrative changes that were not done for the people of Europe, rather they were done to have a better control uh, of the French government or the French ruler on this newly occupied territory. So, increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription into the French armies required to conquer the rest of Europe all seem to outweigh and advantage of the administrative system. So major events took place like the Napoleon again started increasing taxes. He forcefully binded concessorship. So concessorship means कि if whatever you speak, whatever you write, whatever you talk in public, that has to be passed through the observations of the government. So if government feels that yeah, this is not against the government, the wording or the speeches, only those can be made public, and if the government finds that anything is against the existing government, they will not allow that to be published. So this type of activities were taking place, that is censorship was being imposed, forced conscription. So the French armies, they, irrespective of the wish of the European people, the European gentlemen were asked to join the French army in order to increase the French army's power, because the French army wanted to conquer all of Europe. And because of this, whatever benefits this French revolution has brought, or French government has brought into the Europe, that seems to be of no use now. So over here again we have two pictures. So first picture over here, the planting of tree of liberty in Zweibrücken, that is Germany. So let us try to understand what this picture is indicating. The subject of this color print by the German painter Karl Caspar Fritz is the occupation of the town of Zweibrücken by the French army. So the picture indicates that French army has occupied the area of Zweibrücken. So French soldiers recognizable by their blue, white and red uniform. So the soldiers wearing blue, white, and red uniform are the French soldiers, have been portrayed as oppressors as they seized the peasants' carts. So over here you can see that this French army has seized some peasants' cart, harass some young women. So they are also now harassing the women. You can see over here, and force a peasant down to his knees, and they also force the people to follow them, to bend on their knees. The plank being affixed to the tree of liberty carried a German inscription which when translated reads as, so if you see over here there is some notice board like arrangement made, and on that some words are written in Germany. So what is written is, take freedom and equality from us, the model of humanity. So this was written by French. What they are saying is, take freedom from us, take freedom and equality from us, and this is what is called as the model of humanity. But if you see the French people, whatever they are saying, they are not doing the same way, right? So they are indicating something different, but their actual view or their actual uh, thing was different. So this is now called as a sarcastic reference, that to say something and to do something else. So this is a sarcastic reference for the claim of the French as being liberators who opposed monarchy in the territories they entered. So during early phases, the French always showed that they are the carriers of liberty, but in very soon they showed their original colors. In the second picture over here, you can see the courier of Rhineland loses all that he had on his way from Leipzig. So Napoleon here is represented as a postman. This postman is basically a representation of a Napoleon on his way back to France. So Napoleon had a war in Leipzig where he lost the war, and from there he was returning home. So while returning home, you can see all the treaties that he has done or all the areas that he has conquered. He was losing all them. He has almost lost everything, and this indicates that while returning to France, whatever territories he has conquered, everything he lost in the Leipzig, and he came back without anything in hand. So uh, in Leipzig in 1813, each letter dropped out of his bag bears the name of the territory he lost. So while returning, he lost everything. Right. So this was the first section of your first chapter in history. So we'll look at the second chapter in the next video. uh, Kindly go through the text and check if you have understood all the concepts. If not, write down in the comments and we can uh, comment on the same. So um, meet you in the second upcoming video. So thank you for watching.